They had finally managed to bring him to a heel after a frenzied hunt. Hungry wild beasts, hyenas and jackals, to take a final piece from him, from the lone wolf, the lion, the proud one. With his back against the void, a cliff at the base of which waves writhed trying to scale it, Ehebor stood on his horse. Slender, upright, with his grey armour, leather and steel, stained with blood and mud, and with a weathered sword in hand. He had been holding it for 3 days and nights. He had lost its sheath in a minutes-long mounted skirmish during the chase, when the sword of one of the knights he saw in front of him sliced the belt that kept the sheath tied around his waist. He saw the white mountains on the horizon, messengers of the coming winter, and the fiery autumnal forests, two landscapes that were stallions of the gods of the seasons. In front of this almost majestic sight, however, a sight that would once make his heart flutter and would trigger his curiosity to ride there, to explore every inch of land, stood 12 knights with brightly colored clothes, red, yellow, green, light blue, even black and white, and 8 different banners, also brightly colored, with heraldic symbols fluttering in the salty sea wind. Lions, deer, boars, panthers, wolves, bears, hawks. Proud animals, strong, free, but unfitting for the lords they represented, who were steeped in corruption and crime, in schemes and shady games. They did not even fit the men who held the banners and were preparing to fight under them. They were all lesser lords of land, feudal knights, homeless street urchins who once had nothing to eat and would tolerate every insult by those over them without complaint, a spit, a punch, a rape, yet now tough and callous, with cold hearts, having discovered that to take back what they were due, it was enough to treat others the way they had been treated. A chained application and settlement of injustices, forever and ever. In Ehebor's mind, only animals and uncivilized creatures could communicate and behave like this. And those who were now in front of him were both. And he stood there, an injured and bloody eagle, perched on the corner of the world. One step backwards and he would be consumed by the waves. They would crush him on the rocks and would spill him in the sea, like an offering to the old gods of the depths and the ocean creatures to which the northerners once believed. Gods who would welcome him to their kingdom. Weary, wounded, a beast that had been cornered. Yet, despite all this, an eagle. The knights looked at one another. One of them, from the house of Featherid, according to his banner, a brown elk on a green background, who seemed to be the leader of this endless hunt, galloped ahead for about 100 meters and drove his banner in the ground, before raising the faceplate of his helmet to show his face. Ehebor stood for a few seconds looking at him and then spurred his horse towards the Featherid knight waiting for him. Drawing closer, he understood who he was, although he should have noticed earlier, many days earlier. Only 1 month from the house of Featherid used a mace, a thin weapon with a round head full of sharp nails, a weapon of older times, which was now only used by the guardsmen of cities and castles to force order on criminals and unruly crowds. Pretentious, long brown hair, always clean-shaven, both the broken face by the scarlet fever he had suffered through in his early years, blackened teeth and washed, dead eyes. A vulgar man, unmannered, Silvered Featherid stood before him in a place that always suited him. A hyena, a raven, a mongrel. Always where there was gaining to be had and blood to spill. Always where cockiness and effrontery could hang out together freely. We have you surrounded, Ehebor. Surrender, and I promise you that you will live. The king wants you alive. Resist, though, even a little, and you will simply never eat anything other than bland soups. You see, we have enough seals to crush your face with. Try to hit even one of us, and by the time we drag you back to the castle, you will be begging us to let you meet your old father, and the ravens that ate his eyes on the tree where we hanged him. It's your decision to make, Ehebor. I don't remember you not having a tongue, Ehebor. Even if I surrender today, my beautiful head will adorn the castle's main gate tomorrow morning. He smiled, despite his sorrow, his agony, his fatigue. He did not want to show weakness. This is something you should have thought about earlier, both you and your father. We did the right thing. Come now. The worms of the kingdom can never become masters, Ehebor. The right thing, for which you so care about and for which you resist even now, is for the worms to bow and faithfully serve their king and his will, and if they resist, even a little, they will be crushed under the boots of the royal army and will return to where they came from, the soil, but insignificant and unimportant this time. You may not like the strongest one's right, but it is still a right if they can impose it. How many times did I tell you this shit to shut you up, while at the same time they were fucking your mother and sister and were sowing their bastards? Did you believe them while they were taking everything from you? Ah, Hebor. Same that your own mother is dead and you never had a sister, because they would surely be good fucks. And they would be a little feisty after all that happened these last few days, eh? Sildred kept quiet for a while and smiled, a nasty smile. You know that we killed your brother yesterday, right? He was pleading for his life in his final moments. A few of those behind me made sure to turn him into a sister for you, just before he died. Ehebor raised his sword without saying a word, and pointed it to Sildred with the tip first. Let's leave these petty jokes aside, Ehebor. Surrender. It is your only option. Ehebor spurred his horse, and it obeyed. He was already dead, but he would take with him as many as he could. Sildred was not expecting an attack, not when he was so close to the other knights of his escort, not when he was so close to a trapped enemy. His horse rose on its hind legs in fright when it saw Hebor charging towards them, but he aimed true and sunk his sword between the armor plates on the horse's neck. It started falling towards the opposite side, deadly wounded at the carotid, with Sildred, who had not had time to pull his mace free, still on the saddle. The horse fell on him, his foot now squashed under almost 600 kilos of horse flesh and armor, and Sildred screamed in pain. Then Ehebor saw the sign behind the knights readying themselves to attack him, driving their banners in the ground, raising their long lances, lowering the faceplates of their helmets, mounting their horses if they had jumped down to remove the numbness of their feet. The sign was a flaming arrow that was shot from inside the forest, rose high up in the sky, carved a half circle, an arch, and fell somewhere in the forest again. He knew this sign. He had seen it in the past. Velen had come, along with her small personal force. Had she followed him, waiting for the hunt to reach his end? He did not know how she found him, but he understood what he was supposed to do. At that exact moment, a bolt landed right in front of him, while a second one passed right next to him, whistling as it sliced the air. Two of the knights who had blocked him were holding crossbows and had fired on him while on horseback, hoping to hit him before the small skirmish started, but they were now dropping them down to the ground, having missed their target, ready to attack him. By the time they had loaded their crossbows again, the other knights would have killed him. Wild beasts, hyenas and jackals, crows, had cornered him on the edge of that rock to forcefully take the last piece of his flesh. So they thought. A 5-day hunt was finally reaching its end on that noon, and Ehebor, a grey eagle, wounded, with a sea on his back, with the sounds of a man and a horse dying by his sword in his ears, with the smell of blood in his nostrils and the saltiness of the sea on his lips, furious, and with a motive of survival now, as the enemy is more dangerous when cornered, hailed his proud life for one more time on that ashen grey day, and started galloping and then charged, with his horse, towards the 11 knights that were heading straight for him. 1 against 11, one sword against 11 different weapons aiming towards his heart. Ehebor knew that there would not be a way for him to stay alive if he had not seen the sign. The arrows started falling like hail over the knights, hitting their horses but also them. Many fell, enough so he could see a rift in their formation and make good use of it. He ducked to ride through the rift, but before he even approached, the knights on both sides of the rift fell too, and Ehebor and his horse broke the circle, unharmed. He rode for a little more and reached the edge of the forest, where he turned to see what had just happened behind him. A red picture of slaughter had replaced the green corner of the field on which they had cornered him, the edge of the cliff. Dead knights, dead horses, men and animals having taken unnatural angles where they had fallen together. Nothing moved on that field anymore. Nothing could be heard. Nothing would remain alive. Ehebor heard a horse galloping towards where he was and turned to see who it was. He raised his hand to greet Velen, smiled broadly at her when she approached, and she did the same. They had not seen each other in so many years. 4, 5, maybe more. Behind her he saw a small group of horse archers, her father's men and women, but surely under her command. Thank you, Velen, he told her. How long has it been, really? How did you hear about what happened? How did you find me? He had so many questions. News travels fast nowadays, Ehebor. We learned of the revolt a few days ago, and I rode north along with a few horse archers, with hopes of finding you. Learn any news about you, ask around if anyone saw you. I knew you would be coming here. Just last night we passed through a village where... She stopped, and found it hard to continue. Ehebor, we found Nelithan. They had hanged him right outside the inn. What happened? Something fractured inside Ehebor. He knew it. He knew that Nelithan would be dead. Sildred had told him just a short while ago, but he hoped it was a lie of his to make him surrender. He hoped they wanted to catch them alive and drag them back to the castle, as he had told him. He started truly feeling his exhaustion, now that the danger had passed, and weariness sat on his bones. Yes, just before we reached that village his horse tripped and broke its leg. We put it down to spare it the pain, and Nelithan rode on mine until we reached the village. We lost precious time there. We searched to find someone who had horses to sell, but we didn't find anyone. In the end, he decided to steal one. They caught up on us as we were leaving, and an arrow caught Nelithan on the back. I tried to go back to him, but it was late, and he himself shouted at me to leave. He took a deep breath, and when he let it go, a deep sigh came out too. I am the last of my generation, of my house, Velen. His voice almost broke, but he managed to pull himself together. He had not had time to mourn for any of the people he'd lost in the last few days. I know. You still have friends, though, and I did not make the decision to come out here and search for you on my own. She smiled at him again. My father is waiting for you, and know that there are many people who want to meet you. Then a female horse archer approached her on their horse, and leaned forward to subtly whisper something in her ear. Yes, Velen told her, and she looked at Ehebor again. It is time to go. I was just informed that early in the morning another 100 knights wearing feathered collars arrived at the village we were just talking about. If they're not incompetent, and I do not think they are, they will find this place soon, and I would like for us to have a good head start. Let's go, he told her, without a second thought, and all three galloped to where the other horse archers had gathered, talking with each other quietly. Velen went ahead, riding hard towards the primordial south, and Ehebor did the same, while behind them the horse archers spread and started riding ever further away from them, like a wedge, an arrowhead, watching and scouting everything that there was on their flanks. Only when they rode away did Sildred Feathered dare to move and groan freely. His leg had gone numb from the moment he had fallen, but he still felt it, and it had not broken. In a spot of good luck, his horse had taken a very good angle during its fall, and after his initial scream of pain, he had remained silent during the battle. No, it was not a battle, it was a slaughter. He breathed out heavily and started working his leg, trying to free it, even though he knew he would probably not be able to do it on his own. The feathered knights that woman had mentioned were probably under his brother, Tardred, and soon they would find him. He had understood where Ehebor was going, who Velen was, how far the conspiracy for the murder of the king and his family stretched, or could be stretched. A demonic smile formed on his lips, despite his pain, despite the circumstances he was in. Soon he would once again be on a saddle. Soon there would be someone there to help him stand on his feet. But now he had to decide what he would do. Would he continue the hunt for Ehebor inside foreign and hostile lands? Or would he go back to inform the king and form a new plan? All in good time, he whispered to himself as he continued trying to free himself from where his dead horse had pinned him down. All in good time.